Hey guys, Serac here, and today I'm back with another budget deck for you, this time being my Sacred Beast deck. So, what I've got for you, this is mainly built from 3 copies of the structure deck plus some extra cards. So, with the prices, I'll only be putting up the prices for the cards that aren't in the structure decks. So we'll just be assuming a sort of base price of £30 for those 3 structure decks and then go from there. This whole deck will cost you, as of today, about £75. It's not the most competitive deck, but it's very fun. It's got a lot of cards from the anime and so on. And just like beating people's face in with 4,000 attack monsters. So let's get to the deck profile. We've got 3 copies of Hamon, Lord of Striking Thunder. This is your main Sacred Beast. It's got the best effect. It's got 4k attack. And it's the easiest one to summon with its own effect, because you have so many continuous spells and so on in this deck. Generally, though, you're not summoning them with their own effect. You're summoning them with the little Sacred Beasts, the little 0 attack fiend monsters there. And it's also the most important one because Cerulean Skyfire, the spell, allows it to gain a negate, which is very, very useful for the deck. We have 1 copy of Raviel, Lord of Phantasms. Again, another 4k beta. The effect is fairly irrelevant. You're mainly using this as a 4k beta and for making your OTKs with the upgraded version, Raviel, Lord of Phantasms, Shimmering Scraper. Again, you're only running one of these. This is just a very easy way of making your Raviel for 8,000 attack. It's almost like an Honest, and it can then attack every monster your opponent controls. Really, really good for facilitating OTKs. And because of the way TCG naming works, this, for some reason, is a scrap monster. So, a bit of extra trivia there for you. And you can also recur this really, really easily just by tributing 1 monster. And then finally, to round out the Sacred Beasts, we've got 1 copy of Uriah, Lord of Searing Flames. This is in here as another name. It's probably the worst Sacred Beast by a long shot, due to its 0 attack, 0 defense. Its annoying summoning condition. It's not very good, but it's needed for your fusions and just as an extra name for your searches. So now we get into the fiends that help you get them out. So we have 3 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast. This is the most important one, because this allows you to search for any Sacred Beast or any of your other fiends, any of your summoning beasts, and it gives you an extra normal summon, which is very, very useful for the deck. So this plus any of the summoning beasts will end up with a Sacred Beast on. It's also got 0 attack, which means you can link it off into Almirage, and just helps you get your beasts out that way. 3 copies of Chaos Summoning Beast. This, by tributing it, allows you to special summon one of the Sacred Beasts from your hand without ignoring their summoning conditions, and it also, when it's in the graveyard, searches for your field spell, Fallen Paradise. It's also level 1 and has 0 attack, so it can make Almirage and Link Karibo if you need to just get it in the graveyard to get hold of the field spell. And then we have 3 copies of Dark Summoning Beast. Now, it's not as good because it's a level 5 monster, so it's harder to bring out, but it allows you to special summon them from the deck, which is very, very useful, because it means you don't have to put one in your hand. And it also allows you to search one of them when it's in the graveyard. And again, has 0 attack, so can make Almirage once normal summoned. That's it for the monster lineup. The monster lineup is very, very compact and just focused on getting out your Sacred Beasts. So we get into the spells. We have 3 copies of Fallen Paradise. This gives all your Sacred Beasts targeting protection and destruction protection from your opponent's card effects. And if you control a Sacred Beast monster, you can draw 2 cards once per turn. It's how you draw cards in this deck. It's the way you get your advantage throughout the game. It's a really, really strong field spell with the protection and the card advantage it gives you. 3 copies of Opening of the Spirit Gates. This is your main searcher in the spell lineup. It allows you to search for any of the Sacred Beasts or any card any monster that specifically lists one of those. So you can search for any of the Beckoning or the Summoning Beasts or any of the level 10s themselves. It also allows you to recycle them from the graveyard. And if you control a level 10 monster, you can search for another continuous spell. That also includes itself, so you can search for itself to activate on another turn, or for the next continuous spell, which is Cerulean Skyfire. And 3 copies of this. It allows you to use set spells, which is obviously very, very useful if you're summoning it with its own effect, because you don't have to use... You can use dead cards like Terraforming and so on. It also provides a negate for your Hamon, which is unaffected by Skill Drain, which is another card we're running in this deck, because it's tied to the spell rather than to the monster. And then if it leaves the field, you take no damage this turn, so it makes it much harder for you to be OTK'd. We have 1 copy of Dimension Fusion Destruction. This is for making the armor tiles and Phantasm Emperor Trelajig. We're not using this a lot. It's just fun. It's an anime card, and who doesn't want to make a 10,000 attack monster or a monster that can banish your opponent's entire field? 1 Terraforming if we can't find our copy of Fallen Paradise. 1/1 for 1 that allows us to proc our beast's graveyard effects and summon out the Chaos Summoning Beast from our deck. Now we get on to the traps. We have 3 copies of Awakening of the Sacred Beasts. This allows you to gain huge numbers of life points, which again makes it very, very difficult to OTK you and drags games out. It can negate the effect of monsters if you control multiples Sacred Beasts, and if you have all 3, you can give them essentially a macrocosmos. But the other important thing is the way that, again, it lets you recycle your traps by just controlling a level 10 monster. You can add 1 continuous trap from your graveyard to your hand. And for that we have a copy of Hyperblaze. This is the Uriah trap, which again isn't very, very good for its Uriah effect, but the main thing it does is it allows you to bring back your Sacred Beasts from the graveyard, ignoring their summoning conditions, at the cost of just discarding 1 card, which, if it's one of your other fiends, you can then use its graveyard effect to search or add to your hand. Get onto the generic traps we have. This deck is great because, well, I say great, it depends on how you like to play Yu-Gi-Oh, but it can run Floodgates. And lots of people hate Floodgates, but in this deck they work particularly well. So we have 3 copies of Mistake. Mistake is a really, really good card in this format because Dogmatica hates it, Virtual World hates it. So many decks really, really don't like being hit by Mistake. And because this deck has synergy with traps and continuous traps, it can keep coming back if you get rid of it. So, and it doesn't affect your Fallen Paradise because that's drawing cards, so it hurts you far less than it will hurt your opponent playing a search-heavy deck such as Dogmatica. We have 3 copies of There Can Be Only One. All of your big Sacred Beasts are different types, and you generally, because the ones you're trying to summon have 4,000 attack, will benefit much more from only having 1 monster on the field than your opponent will. 2 copies of Dogmatic Punishment. Put this in as your generic removal trap. This could be several other traps. This is sort of a flex slot. The deck can be made very, very flexible, but this plus Elder Entity Ntus gives you 2 pops during your opponent's turn. You don't really care about the restriction on your extra deck because you're just summoning 4,000 attack beaters to smack your opponent's face with. And then finally, we have 1 copy of Skill Drain. With a Skill Drain up, generally the person with the 4,000 attack monsters wins. You have lots of 4,000 attack monsters. So, again, this is another one of those flex slots that you could replace with many other things. But I've gone for a sort of very trap-heavy build, focusing on denying your opponent's resources. So we're on to the extra deck. The extra deck is very unimportant in this build, as you can see, but you can't really run Pot of Extravagance because it doesn't really work with... A, it's expensive, and B, it doesn't really work with Fallen Paradise. You don't get to draw 4 cards. You can only draw 2 cards because Pot of Extravagance has to be the first thing you do, and you can't draw any cards afterwards. So the extra deck is very, very unimportant here. It can just be made of what you have, or you don't need a massive extra deck. So don't worry too much about the price of the extra deck, but the price I will go for at the end will be including this extra deck. So we have 1 copy of Armityle the Chaos Phantasm. This is a big OTK machine. You're not making it very often, but it's funny to hit someone with a 10,000 attack monster. It can't be destroyed by battle. I believe it gains the protection from cards like Fallen Paradise. Yeah, it gains the protection from cards like Fallen Paradise, so it's much harder to destroy by card effects as well. And yeah, it's just funny to hit people with a 10,000 attack monster. 1 Armityle the Chaos Phantasm, Phantom of Fury. This is, again, it's not a very good card, but it's quite funny to give it to your opponent and then watch their entire board get blown up, and you get a Armityle for free from it. So, play it for fun. You won't make it very often. Most of the games you'll win off the back of the Sacred Beasts themselves. 1 Phantasm Emperor Trilogig. We play this because it's a Phantasm monster, so it can be summoned with Dimension Fusion Destruction, and our monsters are level 10, and it doesn't need different named monsters, so we can fuse 3 Hamons into this if we have them. And it helps winning in time, and again, it's another 4K beta that we can get out. Two copies of Elder Entity Ntus. This is for Dogmatic Punishment. If you don't decide not to run Dogmatic Punishment, you can cut this very easily. It just allows us to pop 1 card on the field. 1 copy of Salamangreat Almirage. This is just what you're linking off your fiends into with 0 attack. If you're not using their tribute effects. So, to get them into the graveyard for whatever reason you need. One Linkaribo, again, same thing applies, but with the level 1/1. If you don't want to use its tribute effect for whatever reason, you can make a Linkaribo with it to put it into the graveyard. 1 Gravity Controller. Non-targeting, non-destruction removal for anything in an extra monster zone. Ideally, you don't make this very often at all, again, because it's quite a large minus, but sometimes you might just need it because you can't out something any other way. We have a Nightmare package, which now, thankfully, is extremely cheap thanks to the reprints of Phoenix and Unicorn in Genesis Impact at Rare. So now Cerberus is actually the most expensive one, which is new. They're just very, very good outs for just about anything you could want. And Griffin is useful in this build because A, it provides a effect negation, and it gets back any of your traps that you want from the graveyard. And finally, we just get into the rank 10 component of the deck. Again, these are probably what you'll be making most after the Nightmares. We've got Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. This is for winning in time and just burning those last few bits of life points that you need. It's very, very simple. Inflict 2,000 damage at the cost of 1 material. It's a huge amount of burn and really, really helps when winning in time. Number 81, Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Super Dora. This allows us to make cards unaffected by card effects for a turn. So you can do this to stop your opponent from doing things to their cards, or you can do it on your own cards to protect them from your own effects. Similarly, you can use it, you can chain it to skill drain, so you can still gain effects and so on, and things like that. It's also a 4K body. And then finally, we have Utopic Dark Infinity. This is, again, another generic rank 10. You could run lots of different rank 10s here. There aren't that many, but you could run most of them in here if you wanted. This allows you to steal your opponent's monsters, which is very, very nice. Gain more life points, which, again, the deck has a bit of a theme in. So it's just, again, another 4K body that your opponent's going to struggle to get over. So that's the deck. It mainly focuses, as you can see, on just getting as many 4K bodies out onto the field as you possibly can, and just beating face with them, using its suite of trap cards to stop your opponent from finding good outs to them. So I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, the whole deck comes to about £75. It's really, really cheap. It can be made cheaper by cutting down some of the extra deck stuff, or cutting the copy of Skill Drain, which is the most expensive card in the main deck. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will be back with some more budget deck profiles soon. Thanks.